Okay, today's a smaller update, but a notable title. It's Eminence and Shadow Season 2. Let's get the plastic off. Quickly taking a look at the back, I see a region A, the English dub and Japanese with English subtitles. Here's the special features. Clean opening animation, clean closing animation. Shorts, alternative previews, Japanese promos. Might be some interesting stuff to look at. But, yeah, so pretty straightforward release. This is all that arrived today, though, so here's this week's Physical Anime Collection update. Alright, so that was quick, but there was plenty I watched. Nothing with the Friday friend, because he's traveling. But, we'll just go down my list of stuff. Let's see, the first episode of I'll Become a Villainess, that will go down in history. Episode 1. So first episode of episode blah 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 blah. Anyways, I'd say it was a pretty fun first episode. Let's see if I can remember everything that happened in it. I'd say there's bits and pieces of it that are definitely reminiscent of other shows that have done, but it's nice. It was very refreshing. I look forward to seeing where it goes going into the future. It's the kind of show where the main character is... Have we had this kind before? It is one of those ones where the main character gains the memories of, oh yes, this world used to be the Otome game in my previous life. I was always a big fan of it. But it's setting her up, I guess, as wanting to be the villainess, but so far clearly setting herself up to unintentionally be the good guy. But we'll have to see what it does as it goes forward. If there's anything weak about the first episode, it's that it was a fun episode, but it kind of didn't give me a solid impression of, okay, what is it going to be for the remainder of this season? Because it started with her being actually relatively young, Otome game is about to happen sort of stuff. And so I guess I'm not quite sure, is the second episode going to flash forward in time and we will see more stuff going more into the part that would be the Otome game, or is it doing something else? But I'd say it's an okay thing. For me, I thought it was a very fun first episode. Acro Trip, episodes 1 through 2. Which one was that? Ah, yes. Unfortunately, I'd say the premise sounded stronger than what it's actually started doing. It's not necessarily bad, but it sounded like, okay, gushing over magical girls, like it was branched off that same tree. Not the risque part of that, but rather the kind of premise where, okay, the main character likes a magical girl and because of that is becoming the enemy. And while that's sort of happening here, it's not really like gushing. It's not really about them choosing to be that. Whereas this one, the way it was described, almost felt like that. But instead, it's more about how she's sort of being stumbled along in that direction. It's not spectacular in its presentation, I suppose. But it's amusing, and so I might still give it a little bit to see if it has some charm that keeps me coming. But other than that, I'm trying to remember if I had a comment on 2 episodes is good. Because the next thing, it's actually notable. So the next thing on the list is ReZero Starting Life in Another World, Season 3, Episode 51, which is the first episode of the 3rd season. And it's kind of interesting to compare because that means that there was a lot of anime material that came out on Wednesday, even if I only watched like these 2 seasons. For ReZero, an hour and a half long first episode. And I think actually probably plenty of people knew this because it sounded like the episode had actually aired or been shown at some sort of anime expo a couple of months ago, over the summer. And, well, you know, maybe people knew. I kind of didn't, and I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'm continuing to watch this. Fortunately, I didn't, like, try to cram in, oh, let's just watch one episode before I go to bed tonight or something like that. No, instead I chose a period of time when I actually had a lot of time. I'm like, okay, I can keep watching this, although I have to pause every once in a while for other reasons. But for the content, I thought it's a good start. So, like, if it was just a movie, because, you know, we're talking about something movie length, I think it would have been bad. Mostly because there wouldn't have been anything that really happened. I mean, there's stuff that's happening, but it's not, it doesn't feel conclusive. But in terms of, okay, this is a start to a season, I'd say this is good because it's got a good, I say slow pacing, but it's a good pacing overall. It's not like slow as in like, do something already. It's kind of, okay, we are seeing stuff that's, I think, reorienting us to a lot of this world, a lot of the setup, a lot of what Season 3 is going to play with. But probably the most important thing for anybody watching this is, okay, and the fundamental premise of the show isn't, okay, now everything's hunky-dory, good, let's see, I guess, the next save point. And because of its pacing, it's able to do all this stuff so that we're, like, remembering these characters, enjoying these characters talking, and getting a good amount of, okay, here we go. Because I really like where a lot of the characters are interacting at. It's, I think, pretty good stuff. And I think we are properly set up for Season 3, having been given not only a lot of that, good chance to catch up, good chance to see characters we haven't seen in a while in more details, and kind of get caught up on things, and, you know, just get our bearing and all that, but also set up, okay, and here's what the save cycle is going to be, so that you have an understanding. And you can kind of watch and kind of feel that's the intention. And so, I'd say kudos, good job, entertaining beginning to a third season. We'll have to see how the rest goes, of course, but good job. Let's see, Loner Life in Another World, Episode 2. I think it's okay. So the first episode kind of introduced this risk of the main character maybe not interacting with any other people, but this time he did, and it was interesting to see, I guess, just some of the dynamics. Some of the stuff in there, just some of the other character interactions didn't make sense, but at the same time, I think it's kind of passable as a, it's okay to have on. I don't think it's enticing, saying, oh yes, you definitely have to watch more, but at the same time I think it's enjoyable. Is it wrong to try to pick up girls in a dungeon? Season 5, Episode 1. I think this is also similar to ReZero, Episode 1, in that I think it's good that a lot of this episode is kind of calm after the storm from the previous season sort of stuff, so that we can kind of see where things are settling for what this season is going to be. Now, so far, it's hard to say that I'm necessarily excited for it, because they got some interesting stuff set up, but at the same time, they introduced, okay, there's this girl who's introduced in our main character. Well, I mean, like every girl in the show is, right? But eye roll, there's a posse of pathetic guys that are just like, no, we all agree that we wouldn't, or something. They're like defending her when it's like not from something attacking her, but from somebody else who she's just like drifting in interest towards. And it's just like, people like that should just be fucking shot. They're not of any benefit to society. They're disgusting. Ugh. But I don't know that that's an entire thing. I get some impression that there's some elements of it that are maybe a little bit more important than that. But, you know, just reminded me of that trope, of those, well, none of us are dating them because we all agreed we wouldn't, and that character chooses somebody else, and so they attack that person. Well, I don't know. They're just scum. They should be shot with those pieces of shit from zombie apocalypses that are like, oh, how dare you kill one of us when we were locking you up and we were going to kill you. It's like, you can't, you were doing that to other people and now, oh, you fucking animalistic hypocrites. Yeah. I think that was like the third live action Resident Evil movie. I don't know. There's something there that's, short fuse? I don't know. Anyways, thoughts. Goodbye Dragon Life, episode 1. I remember, oh yes. I was trying to remember, there's that and that. So, I guess entertaining stuff. I like how it feels a little different. So, like, it doesn't feel like, oh, I'm just watching the same isekai show all over again. This one isn't even an isekai. This one is, just a fantasy resurrected thing. But the main character has a reason to believe that they are OP, and that, being a reincarnated elder dragon, I guess, for all intents and purposes, is, yeah, sure. That's a thing. And I really liked the setup for the Lamia girl that he met, which I do believe is in the show more long term. But the way they just handled everything in the first episode was fun. And I think she's there because I think she's in the opening, which kind of means, she's there a bit more. And there's more to see in terms of what this show is going to do, but I don't know. It's like, it's kind of wholesome, I guess. Like, it's not, oh yes, well, here he is, being a showman, waving his dick around, impressing the girls. It's like, no. It plays more, okay, they ran into each other, and she tries something cute. And not like, before we've even figured out what she is, it's just like, oh, okay. That's what she's like, but she handles kind of her mishaps well. And maybe it helps that the main character kind of guided things along, but instead it's just kind of like, man, these might be people that would be fun to just run into in your travels, to just kind of sit and have a chat with. Both of them. So, all fun stuff. So, and okay, in a first episode, I just guess, like some of the other episodes, maybe the problem I would say with it is, I'm not quite sure what kind of series this is going to be long term. But maybe I've still got feelings, thoughts, something like that. Dandadan, episode 1. I think it was a pretty fun first episode. So far, my favorite character is the cursed granny ghost thing. I think I just like how she had these brief bursts of, wow, she's telling it like it is. A kind of crass goblin, sort of, and it's just sort of fun. The two main characters are a bit annoying, but I think that's intentional, at least to a large degree, and in the ways that I think it wasn't maybe intended, I think it's still perfectly fine. So he's the kind of simpler one, just because it's like he's so kind of pushy, talky once, and he's like, okay, now I can kind of start talking about this. But when it comes to him talking to her, it softens up to just the right point where it's like, okay, they're talking. He still has growing to do in terms of maybe being, like, socially aware. And I don't mean like, oh, here's the rules you have to follow. It's just like, dude, don't just keep chatting about your thing if the other person doesn't care, You should be saying something that, even if you're talking about yourself, you should be evaluating other people and saying, do they care? And if you, like, I guess they don't care, so I should wrap that up and give them a chance. Maybe ask them a question, give them a chance to talk about themselves, Play a little, I could have handled that better, but, that's social awareness. It's reading what you say, reading what other people are reacting to what you say. I don't know. I say that, and supposedly neurodivergent people have more trouble with that, which I'm not sure, since I suspect I'm that, but I don't know exactly what that is, haven't been diagnosed, and for all intents and purposes, I would not use that as something to lean on. But y'all are probably watching me and nodding and saying, yeah, he's that kind of personality, or that kind of mind, and that's okay. The point here is, that's him, and there's growth there. For her, there's definitely an element of entitlement. But I think where people might disagree on that one is how much... Because, like, when we're first introduced to her, she's having... She's being talked to by this guy that's apparently her boyfriend. And I suspected most people might not see this the same way. But to me, there was very telling things about what he said that kind of painted her in a bad light. A worse light than most people would have thought. Like, a person I talked to thought, oh yeah, well, okay, if she didn't kick him, she should have at least slapped him. So, like, people shouldn't be physically hurting other people unless there's an actual legitimate reason to be doing it. And her Fifi's is not one of them. But the main thing I picked up on their conversation was that while what he was saying was crass, the truth of the matter is the implication of it was that she's kind of a bad girlfriend. In particular, it's like she expects benefits from the relationship, but she doesn't really put anything into it. It's the way she expects him to do stuff, him to do nothing, him to just do stuff for her. It felt like, even though he wasn't the greatest person, he was kind of turning it around on her. It's like, I mean, and that's something I didn't like about her just from the initial get-go, but I'm like, okay. And to make it worse, you know, it wasn't like he was cornering her or hovering over her. It was more like she was approaching him, but not really approaching him to have a relationship where he would be getting anything. And so it's just like, okay, well, I'm going to take care of everything I can get. And maybe he's a scumbag for it, but I kind of think she was a scumbag too, and they were made for each other. Even if her friends kind of disagree, and it's like, oh, why'd you date him? He's a known bad person. It's like, yeah, but I'm not sure your friend is that great of a person either, especially since she tried to kick him. And I don't mean like a little kick. She tried to do a really, really powerful kick. The kind of thing that's just like, you know, they want you to know it's powerful because she does it to the fucking aliens later. And in that situation, you know, that one, it made more sense because that was an actual self-defense situation. Kick on, girl. But for this one, she's just entitled. But I think the show wants us to know that's kind of a thing of her, but maybe not to the degree that I described. Because at a minimum, she had this idea for what a boyfriend should be, you know, her ideal, and it's just like she chased a bad guy because there's elements of him that looked like that ideal. Whereas I think the growing point for her is going to be liking the nerd character, you know, the counterpart to the story. And we'll have to see if it's going to be the kind of show that chooses to go romantic or friendship or something like that. I don't know that I could bet on anything because the show's wild enough as it is that it could also do something completely out of left field that would be strange. But it's interesting. It would be interesting to hear what anybody else thought about that initial relationship, because I don't think I'm necessarily wrong, but I might still be in the minority in terms of picking up on some of that stuff and caring. I mean, you have a lot of people here, where's here? Maybe the West in general, maybe the planet Earth here, who are more willing to let a girl domestically abusing her significant other guy friend just because, oh yeah, well, you go girl, or, you know, crap like that. It's just like, no, people shouldn't be hitting each other unless you got a good reason. You know, like somebody is holding you against your will, like he's blocking the doorway and you want to leave and he's like, only if you will go out with me. Well, as far as I'm concerned, that's a light form of kidnapping, coercion, especially if he's more domineering. But, you know, time and place for everything, blah 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 blah. I don't know. Let's talk about something more fun, more anime. Mecha Ude, Mechanical Arms, episode 1. Was this made by Trigger? I don't think it was. I think it's being advertised as being made by somebody who did certain other things. Did I hear what those other things were? I don't know, but it is strange. Actually, Dandadan is also strange, but Mechanical Arms is also very strange. But there was just something about it that kind of gave me slight trigger vibes, which I think is a good thing. I'm not sure what to think of this series as a whole, because I think the first episode didn't do enough to show, okay, what's it going to be like. But I think it was a fun enough setup where it's like, okay, well, let's see what happens next. And also you asked the question, why does nobody notice the fucking talking robot in the back of the guy's hoodie? I don't think anybody could not notice it. It's the least subtle, oh, let's hide this thing in anime known to mankind. But still kind of fun. Stories of Girls Who Couldn't Be Magicians, Episode 1. I don't think this show has a very strong grabbing factors, but even if its rating was maybe middling, at least when I saw it, I think this show is going to be somebody's anime, not a diamond in the rough, but or a diamond in the rough. I don't know. I my brain can't help but pronounce it the way I think Jafar did. It's just weird. Kind of a hidden gem of sorts. There's something about it where, story-wise, I think it's got a lot of problems, but I didn't notice anything about it that was too, like, offensive. Just more like it didn't seem to have a whole lot going to it that would grab people. But there's still something about... There's some interesting little artsy... Just the way it's artfully doing stuff, the way it's choosing to draw stuff, the way it's choosing to present stuff, that I can tell is definitely going to be special to people out there. Now, not to a lot of people, I think, because the truth of the matter is it's a bit of a mess. It's hard to tell what to predict from it because it feels a little haphazard in terms of setting up its rules for its world. It's hard to tell what to expect. We do expect a school which has both a magical track and a non-magical track, for the non-magical track to basically be a slums or something like that, or some academic equivalent to that. They haven't identified yes or no whether that's the case, but they set up an interesting character, interesting other stuff, but it's really hard to tell from a story perspective what to expect to get out of it. And I don't think their introduction to the characters helped. They did pretty much show that they have a bunch of eccentric characters and maybe roles and stereotypes for them to go in, but it doesn't... It almost feels like a lot of stuff was just thrown in the show. It's hard to say that the variety of characters feels like it's important to the show. And so we'll have to see. I might give it a couple episodes just to see how it, pans out. But overall, it's that's the wrong thing. There we go. Overall, it's interesting, but maybe not interesting as in y'all should pick it up per se. I don't know. Sword Art Online Alternative Gale Online Season 2 Episode 1. Yeah, because for some reason this one Crunchyroll calls it Season 2 Episode 1 instead of Episode 13 or 14 or whatever. But I guess it's an entertaining enough first episode. I can't remember enough about the first season to say, okay, yes, I definitely liked it. I remember kind of enjoying it, maybe not thinking, oh, this is awesome, I gotta show this to all my friends, awesome, but, entertaining enough. I think the first episode of this second season did a kind of good job of bootstrapping in the brain. Oh, yeah, that's kind of vaguely stuff that happened in the first season. This stuff sounds familiar. And if it's right, then it's actually probably a pretty good start, because it's also getting into what may have been the only meat from the first season. I say that as if that's necessarily a bad thing or wrong, but the point is, I think people who like the first season will appreciate that the second season appears to be starting things up pretty quickly, and I think will give what is the good stuff for the show early on. So, off to a good start, I'd say. Magilumiere, Magical Girls Incorporated, Episode 1. I originally wasn't going to watch this, but I decided to go ahead and give it a shot. My coworker friend says that most people just lose interest in the manga, or maybe he did. So it might be something that starts off good, but gets a little as it goes. And I'll be interested to see how the anime goes. I thought the first episode was actually pretty fine. I'd say good, maybe not great. Yes, maybe somewhere in between good to great. Might depend on your preferences. I like the introduction of the main character. Like, it's like, okay, if you're going to tell a story about something, what's the interesting thing? It doesn't even necessarily need to be, okay, this character is the chosen one and they can lift the planet Earth with their pinky thumb or anything like that. It can be smaller down to earth things, and this one isn't completely smaller down to earth, but it does establish, okay, she has a good memory, and I think the way they show it is actually neat. I mean, to a degree, it makes you lose a lot of respect for these businesses interviewing her. It's like, you're a bunch of fucking idiots, I can kind of tell. That person should be really useful in a lot of places. And, like, you know, they kind of demonstrate, okay, her memory's good. But I wouldn't say it's just her memory's good. She also does a good job of utilizing it in a very good way. Maybe she isn't the most confident person, but at the same time, it's like, okay, she just talked to him. It's like, no, that's not a tabloid thing. That was actually something that the CEO of the company kind of said in a newspaper in a different country. It's just like, yeah, so she's got good attention to detail. And the show is kind of about that. It's like, oh, this new magical girl software sucks balls. It's like, oh, well, I happened to go through a demo of it once, so I think I can help you use it. It's like, okay, that's actually kind of neat. And the magical girl, the one she helped, seems okay enough. Hard to tell what to make of the problem that they deal with and whatever, but, you know, as far as the first episode goes, I think it's off to a good start. Definitely interested in checking out more, and for the most part, I do want to see what it's like for me to watch something that's currently airing, but it's made available on Amazon. And there's a very real possibility that maybe only the first episode is available for free on Prime. Free, you know, it showed an advertisement still. And maybe episodes 2+ or maybe episodes 4+ will be unavailable. I'm kind of here to sort of evaluate that. Now, unfortunately for people that don't have Prime and may or may not have to choose to do that, you know, that's fair. Obviously, I order so much anime from Amazon that having Amazon Prime is just something I have to do. But let's just see how they air this show. I'm kind of curious. Next up, Demon Lord Retry R, episode 2. So that's the second season of episode 2 of the second season. And strange episode. So, I mentioned how the first one seemed to give a little more flashback than we cared about and seemed to retell the first episode. This one kind of retold some concepts from the end of the first season, but kind of in a jumping around way, and I don't think it was necessarily in a good way. If anything, so the first season kind of had it, where it's just like, I guess there's not really, it's hard to tell that there's a destination in mind. You can kind of feel how the show's going to build stuff up, but what it means if they continue to build stuff up, it's hard to tell. And it does these random things where some of them are just arbitrary, like, oh, well, you're managing a village full of rabbit girls, well, we'll just dress them in bunny girl costumes as part of, you know, selling things, which would make sense in our world, but in their world, I don't know that it necessarily would, because it would kind of assume that people would find them attractive, and, you know, that, well, the human part of them is perfectly attractive, as Ari Ferretta pointed out. You know, sometimes people are just like, well, the rest of you would be good if you didn't have those goddamn ears. That's not exactly what they said, but that was the general idea. So it's like, you know, okay, it's fine, it's just doing stuff. The first season was just kind of entertaining, not necessarily great, but entertaining, because it just sort of kept doing stuff, even if it was just throwing random stuff at the wall. But it felt like it all happened all too much at once in this second episode, without really covering new ground, but to kind of maybe reintroduce us to the characters and where they're at, which is an important thing it needs to do, because all of their character designs are very different. And it's not just their looks, but because some of their looks have changed, the way some of them act has slightly adjusted as well. Nothing too egregious, but like I think the Doctor Summon is a really good example, because, you know, she had a very stereotypical cold-hearted office woman sort of vibe to her, whereas this one does not. But both of them are supposed to be the same crazy, oh yeah, if she was let go, she would do stuff. And I think the one in the first season felt like it matched tonally with the main character and the world he was presumably from. Not the real world, but rather the other video game from which the character was the Demon Lord or whatnot. So, you know, episode 2 is off to a weird start, but it still hasn't caught up to where episode 1 ended. It just kind of ended where it was like a minute or two before the credits hit, I think. So, episode 3 apparently is where this new season really begins, where the thing that was introduced at the very end of the previous season is addressed in whatever form that is supposed to be. So I guess we'll have to see, and hopefully it improves, but I suspect that if you were just using this, if you're using the 3-episode metric on this, I suspect it's going to fail it just because it's having to spend 2 of those 3 episodes doing recap work on stuff that happened in the first season that maybe y'all don't remember. And the only reason I'm talking as if I remember it is because I kind of thumbed through it really fast because I'm like, there's some elements of it that I really liked. Like him treating the girl with the bad leg really nicely. It's like, well, that was a sound out there. I don't even know if the camera picked it up. But, I don't know. It's stuff. The healer who was banished from his party is, in fact, the strongest, episode 1. I thought it was an okay first start. I think it kind of established, okay, this is why these 2 people are getting together. This is why he's alone. This is why he may also be secretly OP. And I think just the way they all interacted was fun for a first episode, and we need to see more. Especially need to see if I think to a certain degree you're kind of cheering for our main character girl because you know, she found the guy that's like, he's the guy that saved me, and I saw an opportunity to maybe join a party with him and ignore everybody else's warnings, because truth of the matter is their warnings may be baked on what they expect of him as a healer. So like if you take him as a healer and you expect him to do specific things, it sounds like he can't fulfill those roles, but he's probably OP in other stuff where it's just like, oh, don't you normally need a thief for that? Oh, don't you normally like his experience is a little more Omni-Man, not Omni-Man, a Renaissance man, in adventurer form, I would say. So definitely curious and interested in seeing more. I watched the first episode of the new Ranma half, which is interesting because I didn't watch the new Urusei Yatsura. Even though when it comes to the original series, I liked Urusei Yatsura more than Ranma. For the most part, I think with Ranma, it's just martial arts version of this, martial arts version of that. It's amusing conceptually, but it was exhausting to continue watching, and I don't know if this is going to be like that or not, because the first episode seemed to be a pretty similar story beat thing as the first episode of the original Ranma. I can't remember everything that happened perfectly, but I sort of feel like the battle between Ranma and his dad, when they're introduced to us, when they're shown to us for the first time, it felt fun. And I feel like it felt more fun than what I remember the original being. I forgot that Akane was such an insufferable bitch. But, if I remember correctly, Rumiko Takahashi tends to make people that are very abrasive like that. And I think maybe the middle sister kind of is in a different way, a very manipulative way. But, I don't know. I guess I'm curious to see what it's like. For some reason I started watching this one. But again, normally I'm a bigger fan of Urusei Yatsura. The original one, even though it didn't have much of a premise to it, just kind of a setup, it was just able to continue just having fun and doing weird one-off things, and it was interesting to also see this slice of history when watching it, which wouldn't be as present with the current one. You know, at best you would have to wait 20 years, I guess, and then say, oh, yeah, it's referencing things. But, like, early Urusei Yatsura, it's funny, our main character asks the lady out and says, hey, you want to go see the new Emperor Strikes Back? It's like, you know, Star Wars Episode 6 as we know it now, but I guess at the time, Empire Strikes Back was the big well-known thing. The next one maybe hadn't been released yet. And it was like, yeah, of course he would ask a girl out to see the next big Star Wars. It was a big cultural thing. And it's also weird that there was an Attack of the Killer Potatoes episode. That's weird. The theme of Ursaetzer is, let's put weird and weird together to make something even weirder. Weird word space is really weird. Like, I think that's approximately the lyrics to, like, the first ending or the first intro. Not the first opening. The first opening is that. That's right. I was going to talk about the first opening from here, and it's okay. I don't think it's as earwormy as the original first Ranma opening. But I do feel like it's spiritually along similar lines. Maybe auditorily, I'm not sure. But it is definitely sung in a way that maybe it could be. But it's also, I think, some of the scenes of stuff it was doing in the opening is stuff that happened in the first Ranma's opening. But not like a one-to-one copy, oh, let me copy your notes sort of thing. Just fun. Doing its thing. Anyways, good stuff. Let's see. Reincarnated Aristocrat Appraisal Skill, Season 2, Episode 14. That son of the important guy is so fucking annoying. It's a good thing our main characters kind of make up for that. But, want to punch a face. Want to punch a face. Fuck that asshole. Anyways, he doesn't need to be shot, though. I guess the main problem is he needs to be beaten upside the head with a clue by 4 and told to take his head out of his fucking ass and start paying attention to people. But that's kind of the point. And I guess content-wise, entertaining enough. I think good stuff, good usual stuff for Reincarnated Aristocrat. Appraisal Skill. Let This Grieving Soul Retire, Episode 2. I think this episode is continuing to go off to a good start. So there's a bit of a rocky start to this show where it's like, okay, a show where the main character is thought to be the strongest, but he's actually the weakest. That's already pretty cringy territory, I guess. And the saving grace is if he's actually more competent than he's aware of, but in ways that are very orthogonal. Not that other people are necessarily aware of that, but where it's like he has a reputation for a reason. And his name is Thousand Tricks. And in my mind, what that boils down to is, and the thing I'm hoping for is, he's got a lot of relics and he knows relics really well. Like, better than the average person. And to him, it's just a hobby that he's allowed to partake in. But maybe he's able to accidentally do important things here and there. It's really hard to say because the show's also leaning very heavily on the, oh, he just does a random thing and everybody else around him talks about how awesome and genius he is. And the truth of the matter is, I don't really like that trope. I really hate it in Overlord, and that would be the one thing about Overlord that I didn't like. Maybe there's something more to it that I also didn't like, but that would be the main standout thing. Everything else is, that one has a power fantasy, medieval fantasy stuff happening. That one, neat, good music and stuff. But this one, I'm hoping they don't make it where his luck is just high. Oh, but he doesn't have a stat sheet that says his luck is high. In fact, that's happening in Loner Life in Another World, isn't it? His luck is high. Anyways, fun stuff. But episode 2, I thought, was a fun enough setup. And we'll probably have to see episode 3 if we know for certain what kind of show this is planning to be. Because really, if it's, oh, he just happens to be right all the time, then it's kind of like the first episode or 2 of Eminence and Shadow. Now that I've got Eminence and Shadow Season 2 right there. But if it turns out it's more than that, then I'm definitely... Well, I'm waiting to see what episode 3 tells us. So, hoping for the best. See, the most notorious talker runs the world's greatest clan, episode 2. I thought this was a good episode. I think I mentioned episode 1. Hard to say what I thought about episode 1 because it seemed like an interesting enough setup, but what happened at the very end of the episode... Excuse me, sorry. Sometimes the hiccups know that I'm talking. It tells me not to talk. So the first episode is like, okay, you have this, but then it throws a little twist at the end of the first episode, and it's like, okay. Depending on how they handle that, that could radically change what kind of show this is supposed to be. And here's episode 2, and I'd say the way they handle it is actually pretty nice. You know, given all the other stuff I talked about, it's kind of appropriate to talk about this one with a certain degree of relief of anger, because it's like what they did was kind of a dick move. It's like, well, some people will let it slide, but our main character is interesting in not only that he didn't let it slide, but how he didn't let it slide. It was wonderfully brutal, and to a certain degree you're like, man, you know, they probably wouldn't have done that thing they did if they knew this was what he was going to do to them. But at the same time, that almost makes it karmic. And I appreciate the fact that even though one of the characters that had this karmic stuff happen to them was a very pretty girl character, the show shows it has its head screwed on straight. It's like, yeah, I don't know how to explain it. I don't know if I want to explain it, but I appreciated the fact that, you know, it's just overall, yeah, we needed some vengeance there. And I'd say the vengeance he did is probably the kind that I would expect. Like, there was one here, Rehealer or something. Maybe I put it away after I watched it. Probably, hopefully. The one where the healer guy gets the wish and goes back in time to say, well, this time I'm going to do it differently. And it's just like, yes, I think he needed revenge against every one of those disgusting people. But making the one girl into an innocent, I don't remember stuff, girlfriend, it's like, you don't hate her enough, my dude. You shouldn't be touching her. And the character in this one doesn't fall down that trap. It's not a thirst trap. No, it may be a revenge porn trap, and that's very possible. But I would say that the way episode 2 did, it tickled that Shonda I think that's how you pronounce it. So I kind of appreciated it. We'll see if it gets to continue being a show like that, because it's almost like the first 2 episodes introduced characters but didn't really introduce what the setting's going to be like. So we'll have to see what episode 3 brings us. And then, last but not least, we had season 2 of Seirei Gensoki Spirit Chronicles. Speaking of shows that pissed me off, yeah, I remember some really anger-inducing moments from that one. In fact, I tried to fire up a couple episodes, like, oh yeah, I did not like that person at all. And the show's too nice. Like, in this one, it introduced a bunch of slave traders. It's like, as soon as he found out they were hiding those people, he should have just murdered them all. But, you know, this isn't Notorious Talker. This is Spirit Chronicles. Our main character is a little bit of goody two-shoes, but it's in line with what he did. And he didn't, like, say, well, I'm just so much better than all of y'all that y'all should just give up. And no, he did kill a couple guys. But I appreciate the fact that what it set up at the end of the first season, it's jumping right into here in the second season. So this is the kind of one where if you don't remember the first season, you should probably thumb through it or watch it, or maybe watch the last episode just to remember, oh yeah, that happened at the very end. The first episode of this may have started with just the right stuff, but it is quick enough where maybe for somebody that doesn't remember season 1, it would be harsh. But overall, I liked where this was in terms of resuming where it was. Now, the only question I have is, what kind of show does it plan to be after this? And I don't know how well I judged, or was able to judge the first season in that regard, because when I watched it, the entire season was already out. But I guess we'll have to see. It's a big long list of stuff. Yeah, a lot of stuff in there that triggered some of my angry, I guess. It triggered some of my angry. Is there anything else worth mentioning? Because I haven't watched certain other things, but I do have them on the radar. Suma Show, I'm curious about watching that. That sounds, depending on how it's done, and there's 2 episodes of it out, so I'll get a bit of time to kind of evaluate that. It sounds like it can be kind of heartwarming or melancholic or some wonderful combination of the two, maybe. So I'm definitely very curious about it. And Nina the Starry Bride, which did also come out today, but I ended up not watching it. I've been playing a bit 7 Days to Die with my friend group. But I'm curious about it. It's just, I guess it didn't set off any of the tropes that are like, okay, this is a definite watch for me. But it's still, I'm going to try to check it out. Hopefully I'll have the time and energy to do that. We'll have to see, but I'm curious. And then there's of course, more things still coming out, but the majority of the new stuff that I was going to look at are definitely out. We have Terrified Teacher at Ghoul School, which I don't know if I'm going to watch or not, but I'm definitely curious about, and I might watch it. Oh wow, Nina the Starry Bride is actually on this list, but according to this, it was supposed to air October 10th. Well, gets to move up. The Duo of Our Damsel Conquers the Dragon Emperor. Curious. Demon Lord 2099. Know anything with Demon Lord in the title, I guess I'm checking out. And then Ari Ferretta Season 3. Which I should probably watch the 2 extras in Season 2 before I do that. Which I might. I have a week to do that. But so far that's there. I don't know if anything else I'll watch our first episode anyways. But I guess we'll have to see. Okay, so I did mention 7 Days to Die. I haven't been doing much else video game-wise, just some Pokemon here and there, but no big projects like before. Definitely a bit curious if Pokemon Go would allow certain things to be done. In particular, I get the impression that I would probably be able to get a DNCA in Pokemon Go. Well, I know I'd be able to because it's the special research mission that allows you to do that came out in May 1st, so a couple of months ago. But the questions in my mind are, well, would I be able to transfer it out of there anyways? And if I could, yeah, I guess I probably wouldn't be able to transfer it out of home, I suspect. The reason I'm not sure is because I'm not sure how well everything keeps track of what can and cannot be transferred out of Go. And not any of the sources I looked at, per se. There seem to be general ideas and themes, but I'm worried about being incomplete. And I know for a fact that it said that Mega Evolved Pokemon can't be transferred out. So if you got the NCA and you Mega Evolved her, that would involve that. That would be unfortunate. But, I don't know, that's something to think about. All this stuff is stuff to think about because there's a possibility that I could work hard on all this and then eventually, transfer other Pokemon. Because I think even though you can't get Bank, maybe you can still transfer from Bank to home if you've already got it downloaded on your 3DS or something like that. So it may still be possible for me to pass stuff up from older generations, specifically some mystical Pokemon that aren't available these days. And I guess I want to figure that out. But the problem is I think these mythical Pokemon can't be transferred into games unless those games already have them registered in their Pokédex. Which apparently doesn't apply to Shaymin. No, wait, I haven't tried moving Shaymin in. So it doesn't apply to Manaphy and Arceus. Because I was able to transfer them into Scarlet Violet. Now that I think about it, maybe I heard that it was if they come from Pokemon Go, you can't do that. You can only transfer them in if that game already has them registered. If they come from Go. And if that's the case, then that sucks because I would really like to have a DNCA. Like, I would also like to have a Mega DNCA. She was very pretty. Maybe Pokemon Legends ZA will give us that. But I don't know. I guess ZA comes out next year, so I don't want to start Pokemon Go. I'm not a big fan of the playstyle. It was a very mobile game, and I just don't care for the way mobile game as a thing does. So if it's a game that's you can play on your phone that isn't fundamentally a mobile game, that's one thing. But yeah, I don't know. That's my dilemma. But I also don't know that I feel like starting a project that big, especially if I don't pay for home and make it where, oh yes, now I have a billion boxes, so I can just store the living Pokédex there. Because I think the main problem there is I would be perfectly fine with doing that if I knew how to make sure there was a recurring payment set up to do that, because I don't mind that, not for Pokemon's sake. But I guess I don't know. Lots of stuff to think about. This has been a bit long video, mostly a lot of talking. Hopefully, you know, hopefully y'all are enjoying that part. Well, I don't know. I guess my stream of thoughts has finally ended. Y'all, have a nice week.